The month of November has been one of my favorite months to go out there and catch the biggest bass that live in the bodies of water that you fish. And in today's video, I'm gonna talk about the best 5 lures for the month of November. So stay tuned, it's gonna be a good one. This video is brought to you by Omnia Fishing. I am really excited to announce something to you guys. Over the last couple of weeks, Omnia and myself have been thinking about different ways that we can do something for the BassFishingHQ subscribers. And over the last year, you've actually heard me talk a lot about the Omnia Pro subscription. This is something that I use often to go out there and help me locate fish. Not only does the Pro subscription allow you to have high definition maps of over 44,000 different lakes across America, but you can also put different layers like wind direction, water temperature, even the weather over these maps. Not only that, but a Pro subscription also gives you 10% back on all of your tackle purchases that you make and free shipping with no minimum purchase amount. And this is a special announcement. Right now, if you sign up for the Omnia Pro subscription, which typically costs $49 for the entire year, you're actually going to get a $50 gift card to Omnia in return. So not only can you have all the benefits of a Pro subscription, but you can also use that gift card towards other tackle purchases. Now this only works if you do it on a web browser and not through the Omnia app. So on your desktop computer, click the link down below in my description, sign up for the Pro app, use the coupon code BassFishingHQ, and you're gonna get that $50 gift card. This is a really cool deal. It's only gonna last till the end of November, so click that link down below in the description. When it comes to bass fishing in the month of November, this is honestly one of my favorite months to go fishing. And you're definitely going to be dealing with some cold weather at times. I mean, some of you up in the northern part of the country, we're talking really cold water, but even down south, there are a lot of cold fronts that come through in the month of November. But the thing about that is it really brings that water temperature down. And I've always thought that the kind of 45 to like 55 degree mark in bass fishing is one of the best like water temperatures to catch some of the biggest bass that live in your lake, whether that's in the springtime or in the late fall time like you will see a lot in November. Now, with all that being said, there is a number of different ways that you can catch bass in November. And it really depends on the bodies of water that you are fishing. I have selected 5 baits right here that not only catch big bass, but also catch a lot of fish. Because sure, you can go out this time of year, I mean, you could throw a big old glide bait and catch fish, but I also like to go out there and just catch numbers. So the first of the 5 baits that I absolutely love to throw in the month of November is some sort of crankbait. Now, this particular one that I'm holding right here is a Berkley Fritz side crankbait. It's definitely one of my favorite cold water crankbaits. As you can see, it is a flat-sided crankbait, and you will hear a lot of anglers talk about flat-sided crankbaits when it comes to cold water. And the truth is that the flat sides just get more bites this time of the year. They have a tighter wiggle, and that kind of more subtle action in a crankbait, it absolutely gets a lot of bites during this time of year. Now, this is not my only favorite bait. Another one of my absolute favorite baits is a Rapala DT6. That is truly one of the best cold water crankbaits out there. And a lot of times what I am trying to look for when I'm fishing a crankbait during this time of the year is rock transitions, and also anywhere where you kind of have wood and rock mixed. You have a lot of fish that in November will kind of stage on creek channel swing banks. And so whether that's on a main, like on the main lake, or whether that's up into a creek arm, you will have these channel swing banks, but a lot of these channel swings, you will see these small rock transitions on them where it goes from really chunky boulder rock to really fine, you know, maybe pea gravel rock, or whatever that transition may be. Those are always a high percentage areas to catch bass. And one of the first things that I'm gonna pick up is a simple crankbait. Now, again, you kind of have to fit the crankbait to the situation that you are fishing. There's a number of them that I like out there on the market, but those two, the Berkley Fritz side, the Rapala DT6, are definitely ones that I'm going to pick up. Now, this time of the year, when it comes to that crankbait, a lot of times I'm also going to throw a crankbait on a little bit lighter pound test. For the majority of the year, I'm looking at like 12 pound, 14 pound tests for a lot of my crankbaits. This time of the year, I really like to have somewhere around the 8 to 10 pound range. And so that really, what that allows that bait to do is simply get a little bit deeper on a cast. And sure, you could use some baits that dive a little bit deeper, but I really kind of like these smaller crankbaits during this time of the year. And so the best way to get it a little bit deeper, throw it on lighter pound tests. Now, let's talk about the very next bait, the one that I always have tied up with me, not only in November, but really throughout the entire fall, winter, and spring, and that is a spinnerbait. A spinnerbait by far is one of your best baits to go out there and catch a lot of big fish in the month of November. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can fish a spinnerbait and catch fish. The way that I just talked about, targeting those rock transitions with a crankbait, that is something that you can do with a spinnerbait as well. But instead of, you know, throwing that crankbait, you're gonna cast that spinnerbait up there and you're really going to slow roll that bait. The biggest difference between a crankbait in November and a spinnerbait in November is I tend to get a lot more bites with a crankbait. I tend to catch a little bit bigger fish on average with the spinnerbait. Now, I'm not saying that you can't catch big ones on a crankbait. It just seems like if you can get 5 to 7 bites in a day on a spinnerbait, you're going to have some really big weight. Now, another way that I also like, or another place that I really like to fish a spinnerbait during this time of year, and I've talked about this a lot, is that I like to look for off-color water. Off-color water in November, you know, the fall time typically brings some cold fronts, some rain into the areas. And so if you can find these kind of pockets of water that are just muddy water, especially if they have wood cover in them, man, the first bait that I'm going to pick up is a spinnerbait. It mimics the shad that may be in those areas so well. And the best thing about a spinnerbait is that it comes through wood cover so well. I mean, you can cast this thing right up into a lay down log, right around standing timber, right underneath of a dock, and it's gonna come through that stuff really, really good. It is just such a good bait, especially in a little bit colder water. It's one that I always have tied up with me and ready to go. Now, bait number 3 is one that I fish all the time throughout the entire year, if I'm being 100% honest, but it definitely shines in a little bit colder water. And it's one that I pick up a lot in the month of November, and that is a jerkbait. A jerkbait is by far one of the best cold water baits that there is out there. Now, a lot of you guys know this, and a lot of you also know that cadence with a jerkbait is extremely important, especially in cold water. And the biggest thing that you will find with your cadence is you really have to kind of figure out how long of a pause that bass wants. Because during the summertime, when I'm fishing a bait like a jerkbait, even from post spawn really to early fall, I'm kind of ripping this thing. I mean, really jerking it a lot, bam, 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 bam. But when you start getting into colder water, what you will find is a lot of fish are actually going to hit this bait on the pause. And so I'm gonna jerk that bait down to kind of the depth that it's going to be, which is usually about 5 to 7 foot of water. And then I'm gonna pause that bait. And a lot of times that bait just being suspended, if not kind of slowly dropping in the water column, just like this, that is what will trigger really lethargic bass into eating it, especially when you get into really cold water. Like if you're targeting low 50s, upper 40s, mid 40s, bass really like a jerkbait that is literally just sitting there in the water column. And to me, I relate it a lot to almost like catfishing, because when you're catfishing, you basically cast your bait out there and you're sitting there holding your rod, and then all of a sudden your line just takes off. I've seen the exact same thing when fishing a jerkbait. I cast that bait out, I reel it down, I jerk it 2, 3, 4 times, I let it pause for about anywhere from about 6 to 10 seconds, and then when you're sitting there and the bait is just suspended or falling slowly, all of a sudden your line just takes off. It's just kind of like catfishing to me. It's a really fun way to catch bass, and it catches big ones. This is some of the biggest bass that I've caught in November have come on a jerkbait doing this exact same retrieve. So the important thing, like I said, cadence. The other really important thing is don't crack your jerkbaits during this time of the year. Everything that is moving in colder water is typically cold-blooded, and everything's moving a little bit slower because as the water cools, their body temperature cools, and so you're not seeing a lot of fish that are having very aggressive motions. So with that being said, I've seen, especially with the conjunction of using forward-facing sonar, that if you crack a bait too hard, if you crack a jerkbait too hard, you will see fish come up to that bait, you crack it a couple times, and then they just turn away and they go away. So a lot of times I'm just gonna kind of softly pop that rod and again, let it sit there, 6, 7, 8, 10 seconds. Always count in your head, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, because you will find days where it's like every time you catch a fish, it's on like the 7-second count. There are also days where it just doesn't matter. You can work it actually pretty fast and you will still catch fish. Now, if you have forward-facing sonar, this is something that I always always tell people to pay attention to. But even if you don't have forward-facing sonar, I highly suggest that about 1 or 2 times in a cast with a jerkbait that you pop that rod up a couple of times. Because most of the time when we're working a jerkbait, you cast that bait out, you're kind of jerking it downwards or to the side. Every now and then, pop the bait upwards, and you will see a lot of times with your forward-facing sonar that triggers a bass to eating it. But even if you are not using forward-facing sonar, if you just pop it, you might find that sometimes that upward motion of that bait is what triggers those colder lethargic bass to hitting it. It's something that's really, really important. It's something that I've really seen a lot over the last couple of years catch me a lot more fish. Now, let's talk about bait number 4, and this is one that you know, everybody knows how good of a bait that it is, and it's the Jig Head Minnow. The Jig Head Minnow is truly a bait that has changed the bass fishing market. You know, with its use of, you know, while using this with forward-facing sonar, it's just such a deadly technique to go out there and catch a lot of bass. And the thing about it is that this is really a way of catching suspended bass, you know, and I'm going to talk about this really briefly, and then I'm going to get to lure number 5, which you actually don't need forward-facing sonar with. It's one of my favorite techniques. But when it comes to that Jig Head Minnow, the thing about it is that a lot of times I do want to target suspending bass with this, and these are bass that are relating to bait balls. A lot of these fish are out there and they are roaming and they are literally looking for bait to eat. And those are the type of fish that I really like to catch with this technique. Now, with that being said, that's not the only fish that will bite this. A lot of times if you're just fishing, for example, a rock pile offshore, you can cast this thing up to that rock pile, let it sink down and just kind of glide it over the rock pile. And you will see that a lot of times, sometimes there's even fish that you didn't know were on that rock pile that'll just peel off the bottom and grab that bait. So it's a deadly technique. I know that not a lot of people like it just because of how you use it with forward-facing sonar, but you cannot doubt that it is a great technique and it works in ponds. Without forward-facing sonar, you can still catch a lot of fish on it. Now, let's get into lure number 5. This is by far probably my favorite way to catch a bass in the month of November, and that is with a buzzbait, a topwater buzzbait. I know for a lot of you anglers, you may not think that you can catch bass in cold water with a buzzbait, but I'm telling you, this is one of the best times of the year to go out there and use a buzzbait. You will catch some absolute giants. Now, I actually just recorded a video that I'm gonna put right here, and I actually just spent a day out there throwing a buzzbait. We had some really cold water conditions, some cold weather conditions come through, and I caught them pretty good for the lake that I was fishing. So if you guys want to learn more about a buzzbait, check this video out right here, and I will see you guys in the next one.